This video is to correct some false statements that were made during the meeting. I believe it was on February 22nd. Uh, Bear with me. This video is maybe a little lengthy, but it's important for the committee to understand what is true and what is not true. The first statement that is not true is that the Greenway maintenance will be in line with what the existing Greenway will be, or has to be right now. It's just simply not true. The proposed Greenway, as you can see here, is going to have an elevation of 540 feet. When you contrast that to the existing Greenway, which you'll see here in a second, you have about 548 feet. It's 8 feet of difference, and as I will show you from an actual video from just last week, on a standard rainy day, that 8 feet makes a world of difference. I'll show you in that video that the proposed level of the Greenway is flat underwater. Now, let me flip back to the drawing from the developer just real quickly. So you'll see here that the elevation again is at 540 feet. You'll notice that there's a 5-foot requirement above the structure. And I say the structure for a reason. There is a requirement that there be a ceiling or a roof, whatever you want to call it, over this Greenway. That is to protect the users of the Greenway from falling rocks that fall off the track, or the ballast that fall off the track, which does happen. It actually happened when I was down there looking at this. So they have a parapet or roof or whatever that protects the users from that. So that has to be installed, and that has to be part of this structure. And there, you'll note there's a handrail that's part of this, and a column as well to hold up that structure. So this is a structure, it's not just a path. And so what is likely to occur is that this will wash away 3 or 4 times in any given year. And I'm going to show that to you with videos that I shot just last week. Apologize if this is going to be a little lengthy, but I think it's important for everybody to understand what is true and what is not true. So another thing that should be addressed, this is the property, by the way, coming from the south, headed north. I-40 is just there in the distance, and the existing house is in the foreground here. We just flew over the CSX tracks. We'll go back to them in a minute. But you'll see that the tree line here is, that is going to abut all the way up to the project. There will be no buffer zone for those trees. They will be directly against the project. You can see it in the drawings. Beyond that, this second line of trees here that sort of forms that field that we're about to look at on the right, well, it's about in the center screen now, those are all going to have to be torn down, along with the trees around the house, all together. There's probably 100 plus trees that are going to be torn down, maybe more. And this video is shot at a couple 100 feet high, so these trees are actually sizable, mature trees. Very large trees that have been there for who knows how long, that have to be torn down as part of this project. That goes against the conservation principles that are in the plan. And looking here now, this is where they propose to build the bridge across the river. And again, more trees that reinforce the bank will have to be torn down. That's bad for the bank. It's bad for the whole system there. And there's been no discussion about that at all from anybody, about how many of these trees are going to be torn down and will ruin the riverbank underneath, cause erosion, and who knows what that damage will lead to later on down the road. Now we're going to fast forward, fly back to where the proposed connection underneath the bridge is. I want you to see, though, the trees on both sides of the railroad track here. And you can see the existing Greenway there on the right-hand side, but on both sides of the railroad track there are existing trees that support the riverbank. I'm going to intersperse some video from a rainy day, but I wanted to get to where this proposed connection point is so you can see it from that side. Now there's the existing Greenway on the left. And you'll see that is quite a bit higher than where the proposed connection point is. Another thing that was stated during the meeting was that the existing greenway runs up to the railroad track, and that isn't true. It's about 160 feet away, in fact. The key part of this, and I'm not just parsing words there, is that it has to go over an existing drainage ditch. That is a key part of the stormwater management. That drainage ditch that you see there comes from the retention area that controls the flooding of this area. So it's not just something that can be trivially dispensed with, or you can just pave over it. There's going to have to be something that stretches across over the top of that as well. So it's another correction that people aren't paying attention to what's going on here. And so while it may seem like it's just 160 feet, what difference can it make? It's an alarming thing to see a planning meeting or a Greenway meeting talk about this Greenway connection without a single mention of needing to pay attention to the stormwater management issues. If you in any way impede the flow of water out of that ditch via whatever you do with the Greenway, you will cause flooding where there wasn't any before. It's a very serious thing, and it's alarming to see nobody paying attention to it. And now we see finally the area for the underpass there. So about 15 to 20 feet from the support of the railroad track to the edge of the riverbank. It's not very wide. The important part, though, is that after you get past that area, you can't just make a quick left up the riverbank because it's quite steep. Probably be about 10 feet of a climb. Now you'd have to stretch it out in some way, and either way you look at it, or the way you managed it, you would have to rip out dozens of those fully grown mature trees that reinforce the riverbank, which of course cause erosion. So now we'll take a look at a video from just last week. This is the river coming from the south to the north. So what we're going to up here on the left is the area where they propose to put the under bridge connection. So we're kind of looking at it from the opposite direction as we just did. You can see that that area that was dry in the previous video is completely underwater here, and this is above the 540-foot elevation mark that they are proposing to build their Greenway at. So all of the structures, the handrails, the guardrails, the parapet would be washed away under even this moderate day of rain. And so here we come back and we're looking at the climb out, if you will, after you get past that support structure. And again, hard to tell exactly how high it is, but I think you can tell even from this video that it's pretty steep. Okay, so here's a better look at the water moving above that 540-foot elevation level. And so here's that climb out. Again, hard to tell how steep it is from this video, but it's considerably steep. I encourage you to go look at it yourself. And so unless you're going to build a piered boardwalk of some sort along the river, in the river even, you would have to tear out maybe several dozen of these trees because it's going to have to stretch quite a bit to get the grade, and unless you do some sort of steps. But I don't think steps are what the Greenway does for the most part. So I don't know what the maximum climb is, but again, I think it's maybe a 10-foot climb out of there to get to sort of the normal level. And here's a better look at the overhead. And again, these are all mature trees that provide stability for the riverbank. It's not just something you can cut away and then think that the riverbank is not going to erode. And so now we're going to look in just a second. We're going to see that the existing Greenway is currently dry, whereas the proposed area is wet. And so the maintenance costs will not be the same because I think you're going to have to repair or replace that structure 3-4 times a year. So you can also see that so there's the dry Greenway, but you can also see the storm water management ditch doing its job there. There's water flowing in it. I think I might be able to see the actual retention area in a second, maybe not. But you can see the storm water management ditch essentially dumping water out. Yeah, there you can see it just briefly. You can see that the reservoir there, the retention area from which that water pours out of into the river. You cannot mess with that retention area without causing significant damage to the homes along Morton Mill or elsewhere.